Okay, today I'm going to talk to you about some things that have struck me in the Osama bin Laden fantasy protection and Bible prophecy. First, I want to make clear that I believe the Illuminati uses scripture as a blueprint of how to do things to deceive the masses. So I don't really believe bin Laden is significant to prophecy, but that the New World Order is attempting to create a prophetic figure. Secondly, expand your thinking outside of the Euro-centered or Americentered paradigm. The elitists are not just trying to fool Americans or the West. They are also perpetuating this illusion upon the Middle East as well. The Osama bin Laden fantasy was just as much an idol for the Muslim street as he was a boogeyman to the West. So I'm looking at Zechariah 11. I will post scripture at times, but I assume a certain amount of biblical literacy in presenting. So the first thing I want to point out is the image of Osama bin Laden. The images are played and replayed over and over. At times the image is that Christ-like figure with a white shawl over his head, but the one we see most often is bin Laden as a shepherd. He's walking with a staff through rocky mountainous terrain where bighorn sheep and mountain goats are raised, always sporting a long scraggly beard, never shaving it, even when he is running for his life. The next thing we should notice is the narrative of bin Laden. Go back and watch the 10-year-old confession of him.
We calculated that the number of casualties from the enemy who would be killed based on the position of the tower. We calculated
It's an old film of him, faded video, blurred speech, but his inaudible mumblings are translated to make him sound like an expert on the target of his attack. The structure of the building, the position of the tower, and the heat of the jet fuel, and how that worked to his advantage.
The plane would melt the iron structure of the building and collapse the area where the plane hit and all the floors above it only.
Not only does bin Laden take blame, but he confesses in such a way that it sounds like the talking points of the government's official story.
There was constant discussion about him hiding out in caves, and I think many times the American people have a perception that it's a little hole dug out of a side of a mountain.
Oh, no.
This is it. This is a fortress.
Yes.
A complex, multi-tiered, bedrooms and offices on the top, as you can see. Secret exits on the side and on the bottom. Cut deep to avoid thermal detection. A ventilation system to allow people to breathe and to carry on. The entrance is large enough to drive trucks and even tanks, even computer systems and telephone systems.
So the next thing bin Laden does to oblige the feds is to send video footage of himself being filmed in a cave.
I can't hear a thing.
Speak up. Oh my God.
Cut it! Damn it. Terrence! What happened?
Fucking Josh bumped right into me.
He what?
He bumped into me, right next to me on the camera.
Well, don't let him bump into you. I gotta get this shot. I wanna get out.
I can't hear shit.
I'll tell you what, get a shotgun, Mike, get in the cave, sit right next to him, and put it right in his mouth.
Sit next to him?
Yes, I gotta hear what he's saying.
The first and the second plane hitting the towers was 20 minutes. And the difference between the first plane and the plane that hit the Pentagon was 1 hour. The Americans...
Osama!
Agent?
Hey! How are you, brother? Good to see you. This is Smith.
Wait a minute, baby. You gotta
Beautiful, but so she's from the watch company. She's here to make sure that we see the watch, otherwise we don't get paid. You look great. The rocks look great. Keep the watch.
Okay, don't say Kenneth. Okay. I need to pull out, I need to see the gun, and I need to see the watch. Okay. That's what I need to see.
Oh, wants to know.
Okay, so let's go to Zechariah 11. In Zechariah 11, Scripture speaks to three shepherds who will be taken out of the way. I believe this is a companion verse to Daniel's little horn in that three will be plucked out to make way for the blasphemous speaker. I also believe that this process has already begun in the Middle East, and the little horn Antichrist will appear to rule in Jerusalem, which will be the seat of global governance soon. If you don't understand where I'm coming from on this point, watch my Kingdom Rising series as I go into some detail as to what's going on in the Middle East and the uprisings, etc. Okay, so 3 rulers will be taken out of the way. This process has already begun. However, I don't think bin Laden is one of them, even though he is a type of king without a kingdom. Let's set that aside for now of who the 3 rulers are. They are kings without a kingdom and rule 1 hour with the beast. That's suffice enough. There seems to be a lot of confusion on the beast. The pre-rapture supporters believe that the beast is a one-world Antichrist ruler. That's not necessarily what Scripture tells us. From my rendering of Revelation 13, I see a beast system. It's a one-world empire, with 7 to 10 nation-states contributing to the beast system. One of those nation-states will be mortally wounded, yet will come back to life. That nation is the modern state of Israel, with its Zionist beast government, which was the same beast system that was in power in Jerusalem in Jesus' day, and whom God wounded because of their rejection of the Messiah. This occurred in 70 AD, when God destroyed the temple, Rome laid siege to Jerusalem, and Jesus' prophecy was fulfilled to the smallest letter, to this generation, the one he was speaking to. Not only that, but there are no genealogies, no records of the Levitical priesthood, and that's what had to have for it to continue or be resurrected. Now stay with me. I know this is the most unconventional word you have ever heard, but Revelation 13 tells us that we must have wisdom. In fact, that is something Jesus tells us over and over, and that we must have eyes to see and ears to hear, lest we be deceived. And that in the end times, that deception is so rampant that if it were possible, it would fool even the elect. So ask yourself, what is so mysterious about the Left Behind conspiracy? What wisdom does it take to decipher it? And why is it so popular among the modern churches? It is so common that unbelievers know the story. There's no part of its scenario that would deceive the masses. Why, you ask? Because it's a Luciferian doctrine spun by the Illuminati, who have infiltrated our churches and dumbed them down. Do you think the education system is the only thing the New World Order has corrupted? That along with our political systems? No, they've corrupted every single organizational system. This is why it's so important to study Scripture for yourself. But let's get back to Zechariah and bin Laden. Reading in Zechariah, beginning in the first few verses, it speaks to the Middle East in turmoil. The trees that have fallen are the leaders. Even Nebuchadnezzar was spoken of as a tree in Scripture. So the first part of this passage is telling us that the Mideastern nation-states will summarily fall. Even specifically speaks of Bashan, where they have had a lot of trouble and chaos lately. It also goes on to say that God will smite 3 of its leaders. Now, many of these leaders have been in power for 30 or 40 years, or their families have, but all of a sudden they are being removed. Saddam Hussein, Mubarak, many are trying to overthrow Gaddafi, Assad, and leaders of Yemen, and even the Saudi royal family has been threatened. Zechariah speaks to this. But let's skip to the very last verse. I'm not going to give a commentary over every single verse. This is mainly a presentation of my own thoughts as I ponder the bin Laden scenes of late and the fact that they are now admitting he is dead. So let's read the last verse. Woe to the idle shepherd that leaveth the flock. The sword shall be upon his arm and upon his right eye. His arm shall be clean dried up, and his right eye shall be utterly darkened. Okay, so now moving to bin Laden, and I want to read you something from a website about his injuries. What I want you to remember is that my take on this is that the entire scenario of bin Laden is contrived. He is a fictional character that Hollywood and great cinema is known for, and that the Illuminati has devised for the world. And so anything we get off the net is going to support that, whatever caricature they want to show us. So this is what I want to read to you, because it says in this little dialogue on the web, it says what injuries and health issues he had. And it's interesting because they say he does not have kidney disease, and that's good since they didn't find any dialysis machines at the supposed compound where he was found. But anyway, let me read what it does say. Experts say bin Laden was very likely injured in the 2000 Battle of Tora Bora in the complex of caves of Afghanistan, where U.S. forces believed members of al-Qaeda were hiding. It does seem he may have been injured with shrapnel in Tora Bora, said Katzman. After his escape, he wasn't able to move his arm much. Officials who saw the first video he made after Tora Bora told Weaver bin Laden appeared to be in very bad health because part of his body seemed motionless. So remember that in light of the scripture we just read about the idle shepherd. I have up on the screen the news headlines the day after the announcement. As you shall see, almost every single one of them have been disproven, right down to the staged pictures in the Situation Room. Okay, so now let's read the report on bin Laden's mortal wounds. Osama bin Laden was shot above his left eye, and the bullet blew away part of his skull, a U.S. official says. Photos of bin Laden's injuries were transmitted to Washington as proof that the mission was a success. Photos that no one but our ruling elite got to see. Fake photos that some of our ruling elite were fooled by. Photos that they haven't perfected through Photoshop. You know, they can't have the same debacle as the phony birth certificate happening again. Okay, I'm running out of time here, so let me just say I'm going to address the Muslim Dajjal prophecy and how that ties into his eye injury in part 2.